June 17, 1945. 6:42 hours. Northern Saipan. The jungle is quiet, too quiet for a place that had been burning all night. A thin morning fog clings to the palm stumps, still blackened from the flamethrower runs. You can almost smell the diesel fuel in the air, that sharp, metallic sting that means someone didn't walk out of the caves alive. A squad of exhausted U.S. Marines from the 2nd Division moves across the ridgeline in staggered formation. Most of them haven't slept in 30 hours. Staff Sergeant Miller lifts his hand. Movement. A silhouette is emerging from the smoke below. Slow, limping, hands raised. Miller curses under his breath. Another surrender. Bring him in. Weapons lift. Safeties click. A corporal steps forward with a capture kit, rope, canteen, a translation card stained with cave soot. But then the figure steps fully into the light. And everyone freezes. This man isn't a Japanese soldier. His uniform is shredded beige cloth, American issue. What's left of it, anyway? Dirt covers everything except the eyes, hollow, sunken, but unmistakably awake. The Marines stare because the face looks familiar. Almost like they've seen it in a briefing photo. The stranger raises a trembling hand and tries to speak. No words come out at first. Only a rasp. Then. "Don't shoot," he whispers. I'm Sergeant Daniel Harlow. U.S. Army." The squad looks at each other in disbelief. Because Sergeant Daniel Harlow was declared Kia nearly 3 years ago, during the fighting on Iwo Jima. His funeral was held in Ohio. His mother received the folded flag. His name is carved, inked forever, on the memorial board back at battalion. And yet here he is. Walking out of a battlefield he should never have survived. Miller finally speaks. "That's impossible. Harlow died in 42. We saw the report." But the man lifts his dog tags, blackened, bent, but real. "Harlow, Daniel C. U.S. Army. 037491524. The Marines don't know whether to lower their rifles. Or raise them higher. Because Sergeant Harlow doesn't look rescued. He looks returned, like someone who crawled out of something worse than death. His breathing quickens. He steps closer, shaking uncontrollably. And then he says the words that freeze every man on that ridge. "I'm not surrendering." A beat of silence. "I'm here to warn you." Miller swallows. "Warn us." About what? Harlow turns his head slowly toward the tree line, toward the dark network of caves that the Marines have been clearing with M2 flamethrowers. His voice drops to a trembling whisper. "Something worse than us is coming. And it's already inside the tunnels." The jungle seems to inhale. A deep, low vibration rolls under the ground, almost like distant thunder, or something heavy shifting far below. The Marines look at each other. Because nothing on Saipan is supposed to be moving. Not after last night's inferno. But Harlow's eyes say one thing clearly. The caves didn't kill him. They kept him. And whatever kept him, isn't finished. In the chaos, the Takitai unit grabbed Daniel and fled, not toward surrender, but deeper inland toward hidden escape tunnels that connected to supply caves the Americans hadn't discovered yet. That was the last time anyone from his unit saw him alive. For the U.S. Army, Daniel Hale died in the blast. His memorial service happened without a body. His family folded a flag he never touched. But he wasn't dead. He was being moved, island to island, through a secret network used only by the most fanatic intelligence units. A route built for missions no one admitted existed. This is where the story stops being a tale of survival. And becomes something far darker. Because on Iwo Jima, where volcanic ash chewed up machinery and men alike, Daniel saw something he was never meant to see. Something that haunted him for the next 3 years. Something he would later describe only as the thing they were preparing for. And that thing was about to change the course of his life forever. Iwo Jima was hell long before Daniel arrived. But nothing, not the ash storms, not the sulfuric heat, not the constant artillery, compared to what waited beneath the ground. Daniel was dragged into a tunnel network far more engineered than the caves of Saipan. Concrete walls. Reinforced steel doors. Ventilation shafts humming with generators. This wasn't battlefield improvisation. This was a facility. A hidden one. Run by men who didn't wear standard-issue uniforms, and didn't speak like regular soldiers. Their Japanese was clipped, technical, scientists mixed with intelligence officers. And they watched Daniel the way a biologist watches an animal in a cage. He didn't know why he was here. Not yet. For weeks, Daniel hauled crates, cleaned equipment, and carried sealed containers marked with yellow hazard symbols he didn't recognize. They burned cold through the metal, frost forming on the edges even in the island heat. Something inside them wasn't natural. Sometimes, late at night, he heard screams echo through the tunnels, sharp, abrupt, then suddenly cut off. Japanese soldiers spoke of Unit Kurotai, a classified division working on a weapon meant to turn the tide of the Pacific. A weapon that didn't explode. A weapon that spread. Daniel's first real clue came when a steel door jammed during a supply transfer. 2 Takitai officers tried to force it open. Daniel, chained but nearby, saw through the gap. A chamber filled with thick glass cylinders. Half-submerged bodies floated inside, Japanese test subjects. Their skin blistered, lungs blackened, faces locked in frozen terror. The liquid inside the tanks hissed as if alive. Gas weapons. Not traditional ones. Something experimental. Something volatile. He stumbled back, bile rising in his throat. One officer noticed the horror on Daniel's face and whispered. "Remember what you saw, and you die in this tunnel." But Daniel had seen enough to understand. This wasn't just about defending Iwo Jima. This was preparation, for what came after the island fell. Then, one night, everything changed. An explosion shook the complex, a deep rumble that sent dust raining from the ceiling. American Marines were advancing faster than expected, pushing through the northern defenses with tanks and flamethrower teams. Panic ripped through the tunnels. Documents burned. Officers fled. Scientists smashed equipment they couldn't carry. In the chaos, Daniel was forgotten. His guard abandoned him while retreating toward a sealed lower chamber, one fitted with a massive steel hatch unlike anything else in the complex. It looked more like a vault door than a tunnel entrance. A warning symbol was painted on the metal. "Do not open, V Project Containment." Daniel didn't know what V stood for. Not yet. But when the hatch opened, and he saw what emerged from the darkness within, he finally understood the real reason he'd been kept alive. And the real reason the Americans on the surface weren't the enemy the Takitai feared most. Because something else was coming. Something the Japanese were trying, and failing, to control. And it was about to break loose. The steel hatch didn't open all at once. It bulged first, like something behind it was breathing. Daniel froze. Metal groaned, bolts trembled, and dust drifted from the seams. The Takitai officers guarding the door backed away, rifles shaking in their hands. One whispered a prayer under his breath. Then the hatch snapped outward with a deafening crack. A blast of freezing air rolled through the corridor, unnatural, colder than the deepest cave on Saipan. The torches around the entrance guttered violently, as if oxygen itself was being sucked into the darkness. And then, the screams started. Not human screams. Not animal either. Something between. Something that should never echo inside a man-made tunnel. The first officer raised his rifle and fired into the black. His muzzle flash illuminated only a fraction of what lurked inside, a glint of pale skin, veins pulsing blue under the light, eyes reflecting like glass. Not a soldier. Not anymore. A test subject. Daniel realized it in an instant. The bodies he saw floating in the cylinders, they hadn't all died. Some had changed. The Takitai opened fire, bullets tearing into the corridor. The creature lunged forward with impossible speed, the force of its movement knocking both guards off their feet. One was dead instantly, throat torn open. The other was dragged back into the darkness, his boots scraping against concrete until they vanished. Silence. Then another scream. Daniel stumbled backward, chains rattling. Panic surged through the tunnel complex. Officers fled deeper inside. Scientists sprinted toward the emergency shafts, abandoning papers, crates, even weapons. A Japanese sergeant ran past Daniel, yelling, "V2 subject has breached containment. Shut all gates." V2. Not the German rocket. This was something else. A code name. A weapon designation. The creature stepped into the dim light now, humanoid but wrong. Skin stretched thin, bones sharper, joints bent at angles no living body should allow. Its breath came out in clouds of vapor, frosting the floor beneath its feet. Cold. The freezing liquid in the tanks. It all made sense now. This weapon wasn't fire. It wasn't gas. It was biological, but engineered to survive where humans couldn't. A living agent of terror. The Marines on the surface had no idea what was under their boots. The Japanese down here barely understood it themselves. But Daniel understood one thing with absolute clarity: if this thing got out of the tunnel network, it wouldn't care who was American and who was Japanese. It would kill everything. A secondary explosion rocked the facility, likely a flamethrower tank igniting above. The lights flickered. The creature twitched at the vibration, then turned toward Daniel. It saw movement. It heard breath. It stepped forward. Slow. Deliberate. Hunting. Daniel gripped his chains, heart pounding so loudly he feared it would draw the thing faster. The creature's frost-rimmed fingers stretched outward, but then it recoiled, violently, as a wave of heat blasted down the corridor. A flamethrower. A Marine team had finally broken through the outer tunnels. Contact. Contact, a voice shouted. What the hell is that? Fire roared forward, filling the corridor with liquid flame. The creature shrieked, a piercing, metallic wail, and scrambled back toward the containment vault, its skin blistering under the intense heat. The Marines advanced, covering the tunnel in scorching arcs. Daniel collapsed onto the floor, coughing, gasping, his chains glowing orange from the heat but finally breaking loose. For the first time in 3 years, he wasn't a prisoner. But freedom came with a price, because as he stood, one Marine turned, weapon ready, eyes widening. To them. He wasn't an American soldier who'd survived hell. He was a man emerging from a tunnel full of dead Japanese, smoke, and screams. A man who'd been missing for years. A man who looked like a ghost. And when Daniel tried to speak, they raised their rifles, thinking he was surrendering. But he wasn't surrendering. He was warning them. Because the creature wasn't dead. It wasn't even close. And it was coming back. Daniel stumbled out of the collapsing tunnel, coughing through the thick haze of smoke and ash. The morning sun cut through the fog, glinting off the mangled palm trees, scorched earth, and twisted metal left from the previous night's infernos. He could hear the distant crackle of artillery, the low groan of tanks, and the endless chatter of Marines clearing the northern ridges. But all of that paled in comparison to the weight in his chest, the knowledge of what he had left behind. Every step toward the American lines felt surreal. The ground beneath him was littered with bodies, Japanese soldiers, unrecognizable remnants of Takitai experiments, scorched test chambers, and broken equipment. And through it all, Daniel kept seeing it. The shadow of the V2 subject, retreating into deeper tunnels, its pale eyes glowing even in the daylight. He didn't stop to look back. Survival had trained him to move, to keep going, to breathe when the world screamed for you to stop. But something else pushed him now: urgency. He had to reach the command post. He had to warn them. The first group of Marines spotted him half a mile from the ridge. Rifles raised, weapons aimed, they shouted orders that made no sense at first. He raised his hands, staggering forward. His uniform was torn beyond recognition, skin caked in soot, dirt, and blood, but his voice came out steady, hoarse, commanding. "I'm Sergeant Daniel Harlow, 2nd Division. I was declared Kia 3 years ago. I'm not surrendering. Something worse than us is coming. The tunnels, they aren't empty." The Marines froze. Their eyes darted from his ghostly figure to the ridge behind him, then to the smoke curling over Saipan. None of them knew what to believe. Reports of his death had long been filed, his funeral had been held in Ohio. Yet here he was, flesh and blood, warning them of a threat they could scarcely imagine. Command quickly gathered officers around him. Daniel, barely able to stand, recounted the impossible: Takitai's secret underground labs, the V2 biological experiments, the horror that had crawled free of containment, and the flamethrowers that had only delayed its path of destruction. No one spoke. Only the wind carried his words across the ridge. He could see disbelief in their faces, the mental wrestling between hope and terror. Then he delivered the final, chilling truth: the V2 isn't just a weapon. It's a predator engineered to survive, adapt, and strike indiscriminately. If it escapes those tunnels completely, nothing on this island, nothing, will stop it. For a moment, silence swallowed the world. The only sound was the distant echo of waves against the shore and the faint, unnatural thrum coming from somewhere deep below, a reminder that the nightmare Daniel had endured was not over. Miller, the squad sergeant who first saw him, swallowed hard. "We need containment, now." Daniel nodded, blood and soot streaking his face. He was alive, but part of him had never left those tunnels. He had returned to his own funeral, yes, but he hadn't returned to peace. He had returned to warn the living. And the living were running out of time. The Marines moved fast. Orders barked over the ridges, flamethrower teams and demolition squads pushed toward the tunnel entrances. Daniel led them, every step measured, every turn remembered from his 3 years trapped underground. He knew the labyrinth's twists, the hidden traps, the unstable shafts, and the creature waiting within. As they descended, the air changed. Smoke hung thick, metallic and choking. The sound of running water from condensation pipes echoed off stone walls, masking the low, wet growls that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Every corner held the potential for death. Every shadow flickered with motion that didn't belong. The flamethrower operators took position. Fuel tanks hissed. Ignition clicks reverberated. Daniel could feel the heat before it even leapt. It was alive, dangerous, and unlike any enemy he had faced. The V2 subject emerged first in the flickering light. Its limbs moved unnaturally, almost spring-like, and the faint frost on its skin hissed as the flames hit. But it didn't die. It recoiled, shook, and advanced faster than any human could. A Marine screamed. The creature struck, knocking a man against the wall. A bone-crunching sound echoed down the tunnel. Daniel fired his rifle, but the bullets merely glanced off its mutated form. It was relentless. It adapted instantly. Every tactic seemed anticipated, every movement countered. Then Daniel saw it, a central shaft leading deeper, lined with dormant tanks, the rest of the V2 project. If this thing reached them, the next batch of experiments could escape. The thought made his stomach turn. The team pressed forward with flamethrowers blazing, fire roaring against stone walls. Smoke and screams intertwined. Sparks from damaged electrical lines arced dangerously. The creature shrieked, a sound so inhuman it clawed at the eardrums. But Daniel didn't flinch. He knew one thing: to survive, they had to cut it off at the source. A secondary explosion rocked the tunnel complex. Daniel's boots slipped in water and ash. For a moment, everything went white, then black. When his vision cleared, the creature was gone. Silence replaced the chaos. Only the smell of burning and the distant thrum of machinery remained. But Daniel's instincts screamed. It had retreated, not died. The tunnels were a maze, and this predator knew them better than anyone alive. He turned to the Marines. "It's not over," he said. "And it's not going to stop." Above ground, the sun broke over Saipan's ridges. The battle seemed won. Flames licked the last of the caves. Smoke drifted over the water. But Daniel knew the war inside the tunnels had only just begun. And somewhere, deep below, the thing that had held him captive for 3 years waited. Patient. Hungry. Adaptive. Daniel had returned from the dead. But the W2 project, it had not. The helicopters landed atop the ridge as Daniel stumbled into the morning light, exhausted beyond comprehension. His uniform was shredded, blackened with smoke and ash. Cuts and bruises marked every inch of exposed skin. But it wasn't the wounds on his body that weighed him down, it was what he carried in his mind. 3 years. 3 years behind enemy lines. 3 years of seeing horrors no soldier should ever endure. The Takitai experiments, the living nightmare of the W2 subject, the screams of the damned, all burned into memory. Every detail etched into his mind like scars that would never heal. The officers didn't know how to process it. Daniel was the man they had mourned. The man whose funeral had already passed. And now he was warning them about something that could unravel everything they thought they understood about the war. He recounted everything, every tunnel, every experiment, every scream, every narrow escape. The W2 wasn't just a weapon. It was a predator, designed to survive and adapt, and if it escaped fully, Saipan, Iwo Jima, and beyond could fall victim. The Marines listened, torn between disbelief and the raw terror in his eyes. They had faced Japanese defenses, flamethrowers, artillery, but nothing prepared them for this. Something alive, engineered, and patient enough to bide its time underground for years. Daniel's warnings were clear, containment was temporary. The tunnels had been breached. The creature had survived. And now, he had returned from the dead to make sure the living understood the threat. Even as he spoke, the island seemed to shiver under a silent weight. The smoke curled, the ash fell like snow, and somewhere deep below, the faint echo of movement suggested that the nightmare wasn't over. When Daniel finally collapsed into a cot at the field hospital, the medics cleaned his wounds and offered water. He took it, staring out at the horizon. His family believed him dead. His friends believed him gone. And yet he was here, bearing a warning no one else could fathom. And as the sun rose higher over Saipan, he whispered a final truth to himself: the war isn't just in the skies or on the beaches, it's underground, and it waits. Daniel Harlow had returned to his own funeral, survived the impossible, and brought with him a message that would haunt every soldier and officer who dared to dismiss it. Because some wars don't end with victory. Some wars end with a warning. Thank you for watching this story of Sergeant Daniel Harlow, a soldier who returned from the impossible to warn the living. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and share it with fellow history and war enthusiasts. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more immersive World War II stories, incredible survival accounts, and untold battles from across the globe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a weekly upload, because every week, we bring you stories that history almost forgot. And if you want more chilling tales of courage, survival, and the unknown, stay tuned and keep watching, because the past is never truly gone.